RYUC After Action Report Essential. Individuals share what works for themselves or they think works for them. This recording is part of a series of recordings reporting on an exploration into our creativity, collectively entitled Releasing Your Unlimited Creativity After Action Report, abbreviated RYUC AAR. This particular recording addresses the creativity essential that individuals share what works for themselves or what they think works for them, and what they share may not necessarily resonate with another or work for another. Background on the creativity essentials and the RYUC material. The creativity essentials are concepts, principles, ideas, or whatever one may wish to call them, related to the source out of which our creativity arises. The journey of exploration into our creativity revealed the essentials needed to be addressed and understood in some way by an individual if one desired to move as deep as possible into their own creativity, creative ability, and creative power in this incarnation. Otherwise, one would be placing self-imposed limits on their creativity. Essentials are not building blocks or fundamental items used to create something. Rather, the essentials are about the stuff out of which the building blocks and foundational items arise. It is suggested you ponder, contemplate, do your own experiments with the creativity essentials such that you know their truth for yourself. Here I wish to bring to your attention we each have a very unique perspective of creation. What I say and write about on the topic of creativity with its relationship with the creative essence of creation are my comments based on my observation and experience from the journey of exploration into our creativity. If what I say resonates with you, use it. Otherwise, it's recommended you do your own contemplation, experiments, and exploration into the variety of topics discussed here to see which true for yourself. Background on shared information. To create is to bring something or some experience into existence. Creativity lies on a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, we can create a copy of something, or at the other end of the spectrum, something new, original, never before experienced. To create a copy, our mind is very important and needs to know every detail to create that copy. However, for a new, original, never before experienced creation, mind is of little value, for it has not experienced the new, original, never before experienced creation. A new, original, never before experienced creation requires us to enter the unknown till mind obtains a necessary minimum set of experiences to understand the new creation. To create a new, original, never before experienced creation, there are three ways. One way is to go through a process of trial and error until one accesses that new, original, never before experienced creation. A second is to follow and align with the feeling of the flow of energy that is giving rise to the new creation. The third way is just to hold the desired intention and just trust that in time, when the environment is correct, it will manifest. Our life is a new, original, never before experienced creation. As such, to live life is to live in the unknown. Living life requires all of us to figure out how to survive in the world. Very few individuals are raised by caregivers who are fully able to fully just trust that what is needed will be provided. Rather, we are conditioned to try and figure out how to go through life and navigate this unknown creative adventure that we are on. In trying to figure out how to make this journey, we tend to look at other individuals to see what advice or information they could give us about this journey. But there is a mistake that we all make at some time in our life. It is to think that that other person has the answers for us. In reality, no one has the answer for our life. We each are on a solo journey and we need to figure out our own path. We can take what another tells us and see if it works for us and both resonates with our truth and is effective in our life. But their answer is not our answer. Part of what they say may work and be effective on our life, but the answer is not our answer. The reason is why we are here is totally unique to us and what we are here to do. Individuals will share from what they believe works for them, but what they believe may or may not actually work for them. They may just believe it works for them. This is true for many of the beliefs we hold. There are things that we believe and act on every day, and they seem to help us to create a life that is worth living and going in the direction which we find satisfying. There are many things that we believe about life, or we have been told about life. We have no idea if they are true or not, and they do not reflect our life or resonate with us. I won't go into the kinds of beliefs they are. If you contemplate it, I'm sure you will come up with a variety of beliefs that you hold that you have no way to know if they are true. It's just something somebody told you, and you believe them. In talking to any individual about information that we could find and use in our life, we have to realize they are sharing from what they think and believe works for them, and they do not necessarily have what is needed or what will work for us. How is shared information possibly inaccurate, if not incorrect? We need to understand for any creative endeavor we undertake, which may be simply to survive in the world, there are two sources of information that we use to create whatever it is we desire. One source of information is that we have personally experienced with our subjective perception of creation. The other is whatever we've learned from another or another reports to us about whatever topic we are interested in creating. The problem we face is understanding if what we have personally experienced and understand is correct, and is what is reported to us from another is correct. We need to understand we have a very personal subjective experience of creation. We each have amassed a collection of experiences and beliefs from both our personal experience and what we have come to believe what others have provided us, whether expressed in example, conversations, we read in a book, or seen or heard in some electronic communication. Our collection of experiences and beliefs is what we use to understand anything we experience. Given our life is a new, original, never-before experienced creation, and our beliefs and experiences are limited by our past, we may not be perceiving the situation we face, in which we choose to use our creativity may not be correctly characterized as to what we think is happening. As discussed in various places in the Releasing Our Limited Creativity recordings, our mind doesn't always have a correct perception of what it is we are observing, so that we think we are seeing one thing when in reality we don't have the whole picture, so we have a partial truth or may be judging the experience inaccurate. The important point here is even though there may be inaccuracies in what we perceive and believe, effectiveness is our measure of truth. If what we observe and how we characterize what we observe is effective for what we wish to create and experience, then we can assume that our belief about what we assume is true and correct because it is effective. Now, relative to anything anybody tells us, the same holds true. People will report to us what they believe is effective in their life and works for them. But that doesn't mean it will necessarily be correct for us and work for us. So we need to eat and digest everything we are told and learn from the outside. We should look carefully to evaluate if it is correct for us. Does what we are told resonate with our truth? Is what we are told something we can verify independently and verify the correctness of what is stated, or do we have to take what we are told as true because we cannot verify it ourselves? When it comes to physical phenomena, we can verify the phenomena ourselves. If somebody tells us about a physical phenomena, if we wish, we could perform an experiment to verify what they say. For example, if I say a ball, when released, falls to the ground, I can do that experiment and somebody can observe it and we can both agree that it is a correct analysis. However, even if we both agree on something that we physically can see, doesn't necessarily mean our interpretation is true. For example, we can say the sun rises and the sun sets. We can observe that with any other, but that does not mean it is a correct interpretation. Eventually, we have learned that the sun does not rise and set because the earth rotates. In a similar way, I could be told helium is lighter than air, but if I have never done any experiments or worked with helium, I have to take it as correct from somebody who either reported it in a book or told me that helium is lighter than air is correct. But knowing it's a physical phenomena, I can go back and verify that helium is lighter than air. Now, when it comes to non-physical things that we cannot necessarily see or necessarily check, we really don't know its validity. If somebody says, I went to this place and I felt an energy, that could be correct, and we can go and see if we feel the energy. If we don't feel the energy, it doesn't mean the energy doesn't exist because all of our bodies are different. But if it's a physical energy, we can figure out some way to measure it. But if the person has a response that is more subjective, like an emotional response to something, we will not necessarily have a similar emotional response. So we don't feel what they are experiencing. But as an emotional response, what they are experiencing is true. If we connect them to measurement devices, we could see changes in their body that they are having as a physical response to whatever the emotional energy is. But then there are things that we cannot verify physically. For example, somebody says they had an apparition and some entity appeared to them, or they hear a communication from some unseen being. We have no way to prove or disprove their experience. Now, if somebody says, I have a communication from an unseen being, we could possibly connect them to certain measurement devices and see if their body is responding to some circumstance. There could be some body response, so it can be said something is happening. But then again, is the interpretation the individual is giving to what they're experiencing correct? It is stated, since we characterize what we experience based on our past experience and beliefs, the individual would not be characterizing the experience correctly if it was a new, never-before experienced creation, for it would be an experience never before experienced. When it comes to what we desire to create, if we are creating something that has physical components, we can ask people for advice, and what they tell us we can potentially verify. If we find it acceptable and if it is effective in our life, we can use what they tell us. However, when it comes to the non-physical things, what they tell us may or may not be correct. If we are looking to create a life worth living or an internal satisfaction with our life, we have to look within and see what we are told gives us the experience we desire. We have to look and see if what is said is resonating with us and allowing us to move in the direction of that satisfying life. There are a lot of beliefs that we have that seem to satisfy us, but they are not necessarily correct. For example, given our lives as a new, never-before experienced creation, and it's never been lived before, we are in the unknown. We look for some kind of certainty. We look for something that will satisfy our concerns. Satisfying our concerns does not necessarily mean what satisfies our concerns is ultimately correct for us. This is how addictions start. We have a pain or discomfort, and we take something or do something that seems to alleviate our pain or discomfort. If the pain or discomfort returns, we do the same thing again. Over time, we develop an addiction rather than looking and asking, why is there pain or discomfort, and seek to address the root issue giving rise to the pain or discomfort. The bottom line here is we are a unique subjective perception of creation with a unique body and a unique reason for being here. It's a solo journey, and no one can live our truth. We can listen to the advice and experience of any other, but we still have to do and use what is true for us and allows us to find and use what serves us in our truth. It does not matter how wise the person appears or how much power or authority they have or what credentials they can claim. The issue is, for whatever they provide, is our truth being served, and are we able to follow our own unique path?